Chapter 14 looks at property crime. Now, robbery is classified a little bit differently than a property crime. Robbery is classified as a violent crime because it involves a threat or use of force, so we don't see it here under property crime. The slide that you're looking at right here is from the Uniform Crime Report in 2010, and it shows the total number of property offenses for that year, along with larceny, theft, burglary, motor vehicle theft, and arson. And we'll look at most of those in this chapter. Now with burglary, it is defined as the unlawful entry of a structure with or without force with the intent to commit a felony or theft. The FBI classifies burglary into three categories, which you see here, which is forcible entry. Obviously that means there is some type of force used to get in. Unlawful entry, where there's no force but you do not have permission. And then attempted forcible entry, so where you attempt to get in but you don't actually make it into the building or property. There are 2.2 million burglaries in the United States each year, with about 190,000 arrests in 2010 for burglary. So very common crime. Characteristics of burglary: about 1/3 do not involve forced entry. They've entered through an unlocked door or window. 2/3 are residential, meaning some type of house, garage, shed, something like that. Residential do tend to happen during the day, while commercial robberies happen to be more likely to take place at night. They do hit a peak during July and August when it's hot out and people are more likely to leave their doors and windows open, or they're on vacation. Who are the offenders? This is another one of those categories where it tends to be a young male category in terms of offenders. 58% of those arrested in 2010 were under the age of 25. So again, young male, the average age is 22. 22% of arrests are under the age of 18. 80% of those arrested in 2010 were male. Daytime burglaries tend to be more associated with juvenile delinquency. Now, one of the things that burglars look for are what we call occupancy cues. These are cues that are important for a successful burglary. There's been a lot of studies by interviewing burglars. Me and Taylor did a study in 1998. They found that experienced burglars look for cues in 4 different categories. The first are occupancy cues. Is there anyone home? They look for piled up mail, newspapers, vehicles in the driveway, blinds open, shut, lights on and off, things like that. Wealth cues, looking at where the house is, what the neighborhood looks like, the make of cars, the visible furniture, is it worth burglarizing. Layout cues, how easy is it to gain access and how easy to get away. You can see here might be fences, bushes, so it's just the accessibility and ability to get away quickly. And then security cues. Are there stickers for an alarm system? Are there various types of locks? Are there pets in the house or in the yard? Corner single-family homes or isolated homes are the most attractive to those looking to burglarize. Studies have shown that most burglaries are actually well planned. They spend time looking for good targets by looking at surveillability cues, how much cover to get in and out, occupancy cues that we talked about previously, along with dogs, alarm systems are the biggest deterrents. Even small dogs are a big deterrent for burglars. When it comes to entry and locks, deadbolts and security locks pose the biggest problem. Sliding glass doors are the easiest because they can quietly be taken off the track. Windows tend to be easy. Most, unfortunately, are left unlocked, or the locks are easy to break on windows. Now, there's something called a bump key that you see listed here. Bump key are brass keys that fit into most standard locks of a certain brand through pin and manipulation. They're used typically by locksmiths to either rekey a lock or to get into, to help somebody get into a home that they've been locked out of legally. But bump keys are often also, of course, used by burglars as well. They are made by lock manufacturers to fit most popular locks. So if you can get a hold of a bump key for a popular lock brand that's used on homes, you can easily pick the lock and get into the house. In terms of travel, most take place within 1 mile of offender's home, especially when it comes to residential burglars. Commercial burglars are more willing to travel to far places. So in this sense, this is where geographical profiling could be helpful. Certainly if we see a number of residential burglaries, we would know that statistically speaking, the offender probably lives somewhere in the neighborhood and is familiar with the neighborhood. Now, when it comes to gender differences, we have found that female, this does tend to be a young male crime, but patterns are similar for both males and females, although males are more likely to steal cars as well as to burglarize houses. Females generally who get arrested tend to fall into two categories. Either one, they're an accomplice, they follow the orders of a male, a boyfriend or a partner, or they tend to be a full partner in the crime. But we do not often see females, as in most of the other categories that we've studied, involved in this type of criminal activity. When it comes to motives, the number one motive for a burglary, of course, is money. With an experienced burglar who knows what they're doing, there's high return and very low risk. Certainly self-satisfaction for some people. Repeat burglary are those who burglarize the same place because it's efficient or planning, and it lowers the risk. It could be the same house, but more often than not, it's actually just like the same neighborhood or the same area because they're familiar with it and what security features, how often the police are around those areas, things like that. Now, here is a burglar typology. Remember, typology is just a classification of offenders based on some common criteria. Michael Vaughn created this one in 2008, and it was based on 456 adult career criminals, and it looks at their motives and the types of burglars. And again, keep in mind, it was based on 456 adults, and we've talked about what that means in terms of generalizing that out, but it's an interesting one. The first are top left here, young, versatile. This is the most common. 60% of the offenders fit into this category, according to Vaughn. They're young and motivated by profit. Number two is vagrant, with 22% of burglaries falling into this category. This type of burglary stems from transient, vagabond lifestyles, people looking for money. Number three, drug-oriented, 15% fall in this category. With a drug history, they're more likely to carry a weapon. The motive is money to support a drug habit. And then number four, sexual predator. This is the least likely with 6%. This is also the most violent type. With this type, we have a long criminal career, antisocial behavior, and it's motivated at least in part by sexual compulsion to enter buildings occupied by other people. Can involve sexual assault, accounts for the vast majority of violence associated with burglary, although that is the least likely type to take place. The psychological impact on victims, again, something that we would study in victimology. The impact is highest when homes are burglarized. Victims often feel distress, a loss of control. They've had their private things and space invaded. They feel violated. Anger, fear, depression, anxiety are very common. In some cases, the burglars actually tailor their style with the intention to cause fear. They want to send a message to the victims and to investigators. It's not highly likely. Most want to get in and out and get their stuff, but that does happen occasionally. Home invasions are, by the way, unlawfully entering a residence while someone is home. A little bit different than burglary. In most cases, the burglar does not know somebody is home, and it's not intended to be a home invasion where somebody's home. 20% of household burglaries involve violent victimization of residents. In many cases, 2/3 the victim somehow knew the offender, and with 1/3 it was a stranger. Another category that we talk about with property crimes is motor vehicle theft and larceny. Larceny is the unlawful taking, carrying, leading, or riding away of property from the possession of another person. It differs from burglary in that it does not involve unlawful entry. It's taking something outside of a property. Includes things like pickpocketing, purse snatching, shoplifting, stealing from vending machines or from parked cars. Also theft of property left outside, like bikes, animals, toys on the lawn, lawn mowers, anything, even Christmas ornaments and Christmas decorations are sometimes taken from people's yards. Motor vehicle theft is the theft or attempted theft of a motor vehicle, including cars, buses, motorcycles, scooters. 82.1% of motor vehicle thefts in 2010 involved arrest of males. Again, another young male category of crime. Carjacking is completed or attempted theft of a motor vehicle by force or threat or force. So usually carjacking involves somebody in the car or by the car, and there's some type of force involved with getting that car away from them. Force or threat of force against the occupant of the vehicle, and it's how it differs from motor vehicle theft. Motor vehicle theft is just taking the car. Carjacking is when the owner of the car is somehow involved. There are a dozen homicides associated each year with carjacking. Victims tend to be male African Americans. Most take place at night, and 93% of the offenders that are involved with carjacking are male. That brings us to fraud and identity theft. Fraud involves deception used for the purpose of obtaining illegal financial gain. It can involve misrepresentation of facts and the deliberate intent to deceive. Examples of fraud include identity theft, financial abuse, mail fraud, bank fraud, counterfeiting, also corporate or organized wrongdoings. Some of the most common examples that you see listed here on the slide are credit card theft, checking or debit accounts, social media, child identity theft, and deceased identity theft. Identity theft is a big issue today, especially with technology. One individual or group of individuals misappropriate on another person's personal identification or information, typically involving something like a social security, date of birth, mother's maiden name. And if you have that kind of information, you are able to open credit cards, take out mortgages, purchase cars, all those kinds of things. In 2007, 7% or 8 million households had one member who was the victim of some form of identity theft. Credit card is the most common that you see here, and again, followed by checking or debit accounts. Social media has added to the problem because a lot of us share information like our date of birth, our home address, our phone number, where we are on social media sites like Facebook, Twitter. One study found that 68% of people on social media sites shared their birthday, 63% shared their high school name. That's important because of password information, and 18% shared their phone number. We also have child identity theft. You see it listed here, and deceased identity theft. These are difficult but not impossible to get. So they get the social security number and date of birth of either a child or a person that has passed away, and then open accounts and create an identity for that child or for that deceased person. Shoplifting. Shoplifting is a form of larceny theft that accounts for about 17.2% of all larceny thefts. It is a highly underreported category. 1 in 10 Americans admits to shoplifting at some point. It occurs across all socioeconomic status and is actually more common among higher educated. You can see kind of all of those, and then shoplifting listed there. So who are the shoplifters? Shoplifting most common referral to the juvenile court system for those under the age of 18, so it does tend to be juveniles. As children age, the number of shoplifting incidents does decline. Many suggest this is due to moral development, which if you've taken developmental psychology, you'll know that that would be related to Kohlberg's theory on moral development, that it takes place in the late teen years. Adults and juveniles who shoplift are less likely to view it as being bad, dishonest, or wrong. Some of the techniques they use to neutralize and be able to feel that way are the store can afford it, or they're not hurting anyone, or taking one thing is not going to hurt a big corporation. Most that are involved in shoplifting tend to have some type of impulse control problem and certainly self-regulation problem. Research suggests that males are more likely to shoplift than women. Shoplifting gets does get, a fairly decent amount of criminal justice research, but very little in terms of psychological research. So we don't see a lot of, um, at least a lot of research on the psychological motivations, especially for some of the categories. Baumer and Rosburn in 1981 found that shoplifters tend to have extreme nervousness, behavioral patterns of walking up and down the aisles, looking up front, looking up from merchandise often, leaving it and returning, leaving the store, coming back. So there are patterns to look for in those who work in stores and security are trained to kind of look for those behavior patterns. Mary Cameron in 1964 wrote a book, and she classified shoplifters into two categories. The first was boosters. These are kind of professional shoplifters who steal things for financial gain, and then snitches, which are people that take items here and there. So the booster would be the one that we would worry about a little bit more because they are more likely to offend over and over. Shoplifting, the types of shoplifters, you can see that this classification was developed by Caputo and King in 2011. Research on shoplifting as an occupation based on a small sample of 12 women who viewed shoplifting as a way to make money or support drug habits. Again, when you see 12 women in a sample, it doesn't give us a lot of information. But again, we don't have a lot of information on this category in general, and especially with women. Most got involved in this as a way to make a living and to support a drug habit. We do find something called kleptomania. This is a category in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's listed under anxiety disorders where people feel an irresistible impulse or urge to steal. It helps to deal with anxiety or depression. It's a rare phenomenon. There's a lot of debate, and it usually actually involves people who are middle or upper socioeconomic status. Most shoplifters are actually amateurs. In 1984, Moore looked at 300 convicted shoplifters, and he found that 56% of those were amateurs. It wasn't something they did all the time. 11% were semi-professional. 17% had mental or emotional issues, and 15% were impulse shoplifters. Softlifting, which you see at the bottom here, is illegal duplication of copyrighted software by individuals for personal use. 11.75 billion in revenue losses each year. All right, that brings us to white-collar crime and occupational crime. These terms are often confused and are sometimes interchangeable. White-collar crime on the left-hand side is a term that was actually coined by Edward Sutherland back in 1939 to describe crime committed by a person in a position of responsibility and high social status in the course of their occupation. This definition was a bit vague, so more recent theorists have attempted to improve Sutherland's original data. Clinard and Quinley in 1980 came up with two different categories. The first was occupational crime committed by an individual for profit, and two, corporate crime committed by a corporation through its agents. On the right-hand side, occupational crime in green in 1997 created a typology for occupational crime, which you see listed here. You see organizational, professional, state authority, and individual. He designed this to kind of help clarify the problems associated with Sutherland's kind of white-collar crime versus occupational crime. So this one you can see under organizational law-violating behavior promoted by a corporation or agency, professional law-violating behavior committing as a result of being in a profession that offers the opportunity for crime, state authority, law-violating behavior by those in government, and individual law-violating behavior committed by an individual working for a company or organization, but committed for his or her own advancement or financial gain, not the agency. So occupational crime is kind of the newer category or the new phraseology used. What is the prevalence? It's difficult to measure because the Uniform Crime Report does not report whether or not a crime was related to somebody's occupation. Highly underreported. Many people are fired and no charges are ever made when they steal from their company. Often involve civil court suits instead of criminal charges. So again, we don't get a lot of information when they go through the civil court system. The National White-Collar Crime Center that you see listed here at the bottom is a nonprofit organization out of Richmond, Virginia, which has attempted to collect more accurate data, and they do training and they do publications for businesses on what to watch out for when it comes to occupational crime. Corporate crime is any criminal offense committed by a corporation. It includes things like price fixing, false advertising, securities fraud, environmental crimes, health crimes. The financial toll of corporate crime is estimated to be between $20 and $40 billion a year, and it's estimated that about 100,000 deaths per year could be contributed to wrongful violation of occupational health laws, which would fall under corporate crime. 20 million serious injuries are reported each year due to faulty products, defective products, tainted foods, and drugs. With corporate crime, there are neutralizing strategies that allow those in charge to kind of rationalize and justify and excuse their corporation's behavior. They justify it by a moral or beneficial result, deny personal responsibility, and say that it was the corporation, deny the consequences of the action, and dehumanize the victim. We also would categorize employee theft under corporate crime. This is illegal behavior at the workplace where employee steals from the employer. Cost companies, it seems like it's not a big deal, but it costs companies between $5 and $10 billion a year. It can include actual theft, stealing things from your corporation, using drugs or alcohol on the job, fraudulent behavior, calling in sick. A 1983 survey of employees found 47 different manufacturing and service organizations found that 1/3 admitted to stealing company property, and those are only those who admit it. So that wraps up. This was kind of a straightforward chapter. Property crime is kind of a straightforward category of crime where there's not a lot of motivation outside of financial gain. So we don't see a lot of psychology behind these crimes. So this chapter is a little more just based on kind of facts and statistics. Have a great day.